Florida is now testing ivermectin, the so-called horse paste, as a potential cancer cure. Could it actually work? Or is this just theater? Here's Casey DeSantis. This is the wife of Ron DeSantis, First Lady of Florida, saying that Florida is going to be researching ivermectin for cancer.
And then the second portion of this, and honestly, I've had so many people come up to me and talk about this, and that is the generic drug repurposing component of this grant. And so that's specifically for things like ivermectin. So I know that that's been in the news quite a bit. It made a lot of news during COVID. Mel Gibson was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he was talking about people that he was friends with, and they overcame stage 4 cancer. And so here's like my perspective, and I've talked to the Surgeon General about this. Like, that's generic form. I think it costs like 77 cents per pill. Is there any incentive on the part of some to want to research this when you're not guaranteed to have a big ROI, right? If you have a novel technology or a pharmaceutical and you have that monopoly and that competitive edge, well, then you're probably going to make a lot more money. If you're researching like something like ivermectin that's generic, are you going to be able to, find a study that you can get the money to be able to fund it, but are you guaranteed revenue for your company going down in the future? I don't know the answer to that. But I do know that we should look at it. We should look at the benefits of it. We shouldn't just speculate and guess. We should, as the state of Florida, with over $1 billion in funding since Ron DeSantis took office for cancer, we should be looking into things that are in generic form. And do they show outcomes? And do they show hope for people who are suffering? And we're uniquely positioned to do that because we're not in it for an ROI from a corporate standpoint. We're in it for an ROI on behalf of you, the taxpayer, and you who has a family member who's suffering from cancer. And God forbid that you suffer from cancer. And so that's why I think we're uniquely positioned to be able to help people. And I'm just, honestly, I don't like talking about cancer. Ever. I told Dr. Panetta on more than one occasion I'd rather sit in my closet and never say the cancer word again. But I am so immensely proud of what this state has done to really step up, to try to provide hope to a lot of people, to invest in meaningful things. It's one thing to appropriate money, but it's another thing to drive outcomes, to hold yourself accountable, and to try to incentivize prevention and better treatment. So very proud of this guy for a lot of reasons, because he put up with me while I was battling cancer, but very proud of what he's done to really stand by me through the fight and to give hope to a lot of people across the state.
Joe?
Bravo, Florida. This is exactly what governments should be doing, and Casey DeSantis is absolutely right on this. There is no incentive for big pharma to study a lot of these medications that are either they're generic now. You can no longer make a fortune off of them, or even things that are like vitamins, treatments that would be otherwise free or next to nothing. There's no profit incentive for these big companies to go and develop the drugs or do any sort of testing. So the governments should be doing this. This is exactly what governments should be doing, is looking at all of these cheap, low-cost therapies and, the antidotes that are out there, people saying, hey, I cured cancer with this, or I cured some other XYZ disease with this other thing. And it is the responsibility, I think, of the government to then go and say, okay, well, then let's study it. Let's see. Because we're here to do it for just the benefit of the people. We're not here to make any money. And if it turns out that it works, then great. The reason why a lot of governments don't do this is because Big Pharma pressures them out of it. Big Pharma doesn't want a cheap cure for cancer. Why would they want that? So even if they can't make money on ivermectin and they don't want to study it themselves, they don't want anybody else studying it either, because they don't want there to be a cheap cure for cancer. They want to develop a really expensive cure that's going to cost you an arm and a leg, and it's either that arm and a leg or your life. What would you rather pay? So this is the right move. I'm really excited about this. And I hope more governments follow suit. It's really incredible that this is a Republican government doing this. This is something that's kind of had more of a left-wing viewpoint. This is like socialism, where the government is getting together and doing something on behalf of the people, and then maybe the government would then have some sort of claim to the treatment, but not really in this case, because it's just it would just be a generic treatment. But this is definitely the direction that government should be going in. I want to read this tweet to you. This is Dr. William Mackes. We've had him on the show to talk about ivermectin and the claims of it having some positive effects on cancer. And this is what he says: ivermectin and fenbendazole, testimonial, 57-year-old Chicago man with stage 4 small cell carcinoma of the bladder, cancer-free after 2 months. Says we have been particularly successful with bladder cancers of all types. 57-year-old Chicago man with stage 4 small cell carcinoma of the bladder, very aggressive type. End of May 2025, he started ivermectin at 1.5 milligrams per kilo per day, fenbendazole at 1,500 milligrams per day. He also had pelvic radiation, so he still did do the traditional treatments for cancer. He just added these other medications to that. The results after 2 months, today's PET examination demonstrates complete interval resolution of previous hypermetabolic pelvic tumor, complete metabolic response to therapy, no FDG avid tumor currently. Signatera CT DNA blood work is back at 0. From the patient, this is clearly a success story after starting the protocol with a very aggressive form of cancer. We cannot thank you enough. He said he is cancer-free. Dr. Mackus says, I have the world's largest ivermectin cancer clientele. We are soon getting to a point where oncologists not discussing ivermectin, fenbendazole, and menbendazole with a cancer patient will be considered medical malpractice. And that might be the case. I mean, they might find that adding, and I just want to emphasize, they're adding this to the traditional protocols. So this isn't, okay, therapy you do instead of radiation. No, this was done in conjunction with radiation. And if they find that in conjunction with radiation, for example, that these drugs help and that the success rate's higher, then it would be medical malpractice for oncologists to not say. And if we also give you these other drugs, and this is the mechanism that we think, after studying it finally Florida's study, after studying it, we now know that the mechanism, that it works, and that the mechanism is because of X, Y. The hypothesis is that there's a mechanism, maybe some anti-inflammation or something. It does something, and that is why it helps shrink tumors even faster. Yes, I mean, anything that we can find to help shrink tumors faster would be fantastic. So I don't know why but of course, people on the left are gonna just poo-poo this and say, no, absolutely not. Just give me the radiation, doc. Don't give me anything else. I don't want to potentially survive. He says, Big Pharma is fighting hard against this. They will embrace anything other than ivermectin and fenbendazole. They will embrace mRNA cancer vaccines, NK cell infusions, even metabolic theory of cancer. Yes, the big pharma bots will claim you can cure cancer with the right diet. You can't. Anything but cheap, readily available repurposed drugs that actually work. It's sad that I have to fight in order to be able to help cancer patients. I have to fight politicians like Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, who declared war on terminally ill cancer patients. I have to fight a corrupt and incompetent medical establishment. I shouldn't have to. And then he links there to an article. And, it really is, this is the way forward. Look, if you're terminal, if you're at stage 4, why wouldn't you try everything? If there's a possibility that something like this works, why wouldn't you try it? Especially if they're not saying stop your radiation and do this instead. They're saying add this to your protocol, and it might actually give you higher rates of success and more rapid higher rates of success. Why wouldn't you try that? So it's interesting. We'll see what Florida does. We'll see what the results are. But, kudos to this guy. I don't really like this guy. The reason I don't like this guy is because he actually actively prevented people from being on my show because of my stance on Israel. Actually put a blockade on them being on my show. So he's not a pro-free speech guy. A lot of things that he's done right during the pandemic, I thought he was excellent. When it comes to this, I think he's excellent. So a lot of the medical stuff, I do think he's excellent. And when it comes to other stuff, I think he's kind of I think he's bought off or something, right? But nonetheless, good job on this one thing. We need more of this. I hope more states follow suit. We do need the governments to step in and actually start studying all of these therapies and treatments and protocols that Big Pharma cannot make money on. And we need to ensure we, the people, need to pressure our politicians to do what is in the best interest of the people and not what is in the best interest of Big Pharma's bottom line. Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iverson Show, which you can catch Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. It is free for you to watch. Again, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, KimIversonShow.com. See you there.